I had a plan today, which was to talk about grace and the goodness of Spirit, and talking about how we are graced by the love and the light of the divine in every moment. So just take a deep breath with me into every moment that you can recall in the last 24 hours. Yeah. Allow yourself to be free from any judgment around what those emotions might have been or what those reactions might have been, thoughts and feelings. Just recognizing that we were graced in those moments by the love and the light of the divine, no matter what they were. So I often feel triggered when I'm asked to talk about good, because sometimes many of us look around in the world and we think, what is the good in this, right? I remember taking a class that was The Power of Your Word many years ago, and we brought in newspaper clippings, and we were supposed to discuss how God was present in all of those newspaper clippings. Has anybody else taken that class? Yes, Reverend Divine, of course, and Carol. And it was always a very long process of about an hour and a half, which was about more than half of our class, of discussion about where the good could possibly be, where God could possibly be in these current events. And I remember people feeling very passionately about that, right? Where is God in all of this? Where is the good? And I'm still often asked that. How are we supposed to see God in this moment or in that moment? And I always struggle a little bit, because it's different for each one of us to relate to where God is in our lives on a daily basis, let alone where God is in those big moments, right? To remember that the truth and that the light and the love of the divine is present even when it feels like it's really uncomfortable, where it's tragic, where it's sad. And I've been thinking recently about a story, well, it's not a story, it's the truth of how giraffes are birthed. Do you know how this happens? Giraffes are very tall creatures. And the process of birthing the baby calf is not very pretty, in part because it's birth, and in the other part because the mother giraffe, the entire time that the giraffe is being birthed, is kicking the child on his way out of the birth canal. Kicking. And it's not for any reason to expose their child to cruelty or to pain in the world. It really is for survival, that if the baby giraffe is not being kicked awake and sentient the entire time that it's being birthed, it won't stand and walk, which is necessary to happen immediately as the giraffe comes out of the birth canal. That's necessary for its survival. So this person, or this source, the mother that has given this creature life, is kicking in order to propel good, right? In order to keep this giraffe alive, to bring its life into being in this way. And I think of how much of our life is like that experience, right? How many of those moments where we are just kicked, where we are brought into being in the world in a way that we have thought might have been cruel or unpleasant. Our awareness might have been rough or difficult, when the fact is we have been birthed into this way of being because we are going to be something pretty fabulous, as tall as a giraffe, all the good in the world. And our willingness to experience it and be with it free of any judgment is really where the good is, right? In this philosophy, I remember coming to first services many years ago, and someone would get up on the stage every single service I came to and say, life is good all the time. Yeah, 24/7, 365, Divine says, life is good all the time. Has anyone else heard that tagline quite a bit? Right? And I remember thinking, what is that child talking about? And then having my own relationship with it grow and change over the years, because there are many moments in life where I was riding that high and it could not possibly get any better, and life is good all the time. And then in those moments where I've decided that something isn't good or doesn't feel that great, then I wonder again. And then had to come to this whole new awareness around the fact that life really is good all the time. Part of it's my perception, part of it's my willingness to be with it as it is, right? Our willingness to be with our sadness as much as we're willing to be with our joy, our willingness to be with our pain as much as we are willing to be with our exuberance. And that willingness is what makes life good all the time. that willingness to acknowledge that even if we want to tell ourselves that our emotions or our conditions aren't that great, that life is good in this moment. That we are growing, that we are blossoming, that we are becoming more and more spirit on this world as long as we are allowing ourselves to do it. Yeah, that allowing thing, right? Getting out of our own way and being present to what's here. Because life is good all the time doesn't mean that we put a smiley face sticker on every piece of junk that we're dealing with and say, life is good. That's not really what I'm asking you to do. What I'm asking you to do is to be present with life the way that it is right now and recognize the spirit that is operating in it. Recognize your own good that's available in it. And be present with it, free of any judgment. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because I feel like I might need to. Free of any judgment. Ernest Holmes talks about our conditions. We talk about conditions a lot. And recognizing that those conditions are not our reality, and they certainly are not the truth of who we are. Whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's our joy, and all of the magnificence in the world, those conditions are not who we are. It's really easy to think about that when we're talking about something that isn't very positive. Well, of course my sadness isn't all of who I am. But on those days when we're walking around feeling pretty darn good about ourselves, it's kind of hard to remember that that feeling pretty darn good is also not the truth of who we are. That the truth of who we are is so much bigger than either one of those things. We are not our conditions. Is it Pema Chodron? She says that you are the sky, not the weather. Right? You are the power and the presence of the divine on this planet. In those days when you are feeling less than all that, in those moments when you're experiencing sadness or hurt or pain, you are also the power and the presence of the divine. And there is something that is so good, that loves us so much on the planet, the universe, spirit, the divine, God, whatever you want to call it. There are many, many terms. That is moving and living and moving and having its being through us. And that's the good. That willingness to see the divine in who you are, no matter where you're standing, no matter what your circumstance may be. That's the all good of life. So sometimes our broken hearts give birth to these things like anxiety and panic or anger, resentment and blame. But under the hardness of that armor, there is a tenderness of genuine sadness. This continual ache of the heart is a blessing that, when accepted fully, can be shared with all. Right? Those places where we are broken and where we are sad cultivates this tenderness in life. Yeah, breathe into that with me, into that tenderness that allows for that armor to fall away. I talk about authenticity with people a lot, with people who are looking to find the truth of who they are in the world and express it. And they often really feel like the authenticity of who they are is just that fabulous, just that day when they are walking around feeling like they could hang the moon, right? But authenticity is really that willingness to be with the full picture. Is really being willing to admit on the day that you are kind of cranky, that you are just kind of cranky, that it's just too hot to be outside. I've had that conversation with Divine lately. That's what's making me think of it. It's just too darn hot. And you're allowed to be cranky about that. That is a genuine human experience on this planet, and that Spirit doesn't want anything different for you than that. Right? If you're telling somebody that it's hot just because you think that's what they want to hear, that's a different story. But if you're willing to have that experience and be in it and be who you are with it, that's authenticity. That's your good. Right? Yes. So feelings like our disappointment and our embarrassment, our irritation, resentment, anger, jealousy, fear, instead of being bad news, this is being quoted from Pema Chodron again, by the way, are actually very clear moments that teach us where it is that we're holding back. They teach us to perk up and lean in when we feel we'd rather collapse and back away. They're like the messengers that show us with terrifying clarity exactly where we're stuck. This very moment is the perfect teacher. This very moment. And lucky for us, it's wherever we are. So maybe the practice isn't just for me to be present with where I am, but for all of us. So that's the invitation. So take another deep breath with me and just, into this present moment, wherever you are. So whatever those conditions were that you brought in with you today, whatever those realities that you decided were just true about life, right? We all do that every now and then. This is the way that it works, and this is the truth of it. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. So be with that. If that's your truth, then be with it. Even if it's that you're not having a great day, that it's too darn hot, that you're too busy, that you're too tired, that you're feeling pretty darn good about life. The truth of life lies in our willingness to be present with it, free of any judgment. I'm going to keep saying it. That's where the experience is. It's not in the smiley face sticker. It's not in just saying life is good all the time and pretending like we can't tell our stories, like we can't be the truth of who we are at any given moment, because that's exactly the opposite of what we're doing here. What we're doing here when we're being present with Spirit, when we're living our lives with intention, we are being really mindful of our conditions and our experiences, not because we need to change them, not because we need to spend a whole lot of time in the self-help aisle at Barnes & Noble this afternoon, but because they're the truth of who we are right now. And if we want that truth to be different, we first need to be willing to be aware about it and present with it, and that's when we can make a difference. Not just in our lives, but in the lives of others, right? We've all had these experiences, whether it's friendships or casual interactions with people that we just think aren't very authentic, or maybe they're fake. Have you all had those experiences? And the reason that rubs us so wrong is because we are recognizing those places in ourselves where we're not willing to do the same, where we're not willing to be authentic. And that really does mean those places that don't look so pretty to share. Free of any judgment. I'll say it again. Yeah. And it is also in the questioning. I'm not timing myself very well, Jane, so if you need to throw something at me back there at some point, you feel free, because I can ramble on. It's really funny. When I first started public speaking, I do the Wednesday night services at the Albuquerque Center, and I was hard-pressed to talk for 10 minutes, and I would run off the stage. And now I need people to throw things at me. It's like, stop talking, minister girl, just stop it. So if you need to do that, feel free. So into the questioning. We often think that those questions are a sign that something has gone wrong, right? Those moments where we question our faith, where we question our beliefs, where we question whether or not life really is good all the time. Those questions are usually where we're pushing up against the edge of things, right? We're about to break into something new. So I haven't been texting on the phone. I was looking up a passage that I wanted to share with you because I've been meditating on it the last couple of weeks. And this is written by Rachel Naomi Remen, who is a teacher and a spiritual teacher and a medical doctor, who has experienced Crohn's disease through most of her adult life. So she had to learn a new relationship to healing work that wasn't just that doctor's typical story about making it better or it's over, right? Okay, so this is her take on questions. She says, I find it possible to neither doubt nor accept the unprovable, but simply to remain open and wait. I accept that I may never know where truth lies in such matters. The most important questions don't seem to have ready answers, but the questions themselves have a healing power when they are shared. An answer is an invitation to stop thinking about something, to stop wondering. Life has no such stopping places. Life is a process whose every event is connected to the moment that just went by. An unanswered question is a fine traveling companion. It sharpens your eye for the road. Yeah. Oh, the last part of it? The last sentence. You got it. An unanswered question is a fine traveling companion. It sharpens your eye for the road. Yeah. It's my favorite part. I don't have a problem repeating that. sharpens your eye for the road. Those places where we are willing to question, where we're willing not to know the answers, keeps us alert, keeps us on our toes, keeps us looking for the all good in everything, not just those things that we've decided are good when we're playing the game of good and bad. Because most often that's when I ask people what good is, or when we start these conversations, there's always this debate about what's good and what's bad. How can this condition that feels really uncomfortable possibly be good? Because it's yours, because you're in it. And when you're willing to be with it and be present to it, that starts there. And then if you want to recognize the healing work that's to be done around it, or who you want to be with it as someone different, then you delve deeper into that. But walking around like life is a problem to be solved, or like we're a puzzle that needs to be put together, or like we're a project, that's not really where we're finding the good. Does anybody else do that? Yeah, we're not projects. We really aren't. And doing our spiritual work isn't about fixing something, right? I have lots of projects around my house, and that usually means that there's some sort of like big trip to Lowe's and a project to complete, and that there is an end, but there isn't that with us. We are not a project, and just because we hang some boards somewhere in a dark corner of ourselves doesn't mean that we have fixed something that we no longer have to deal with, or at least not for 10 more years until we put the house on the market, right? We are constantly in this process, and this process really is about growing in our relationship with Spirit and growing in our relationship with life, which is oftentimes growing in relationship with one another. That's not a project. That's something that we are constantly being called to do. And that's what Ernest Holmes is talking about when he's talking about that source for good that we are constantly in connection with. We are constantly in connection with one another and with all of life. And we are constantly growing and changing and living and moving and dancing and crying and doing all of those things in the midst of that all good, that source. That's something that loves us so much that no matter what we put into it or what we ask for, it says yes. Yes, my love, here you go. All that junk that you're worried about, yes, here you go. All of that really great stuff that you are trying to invite in, but you are standing in your own way, yes, here you go. Maybe get out of your own way. Right? Okay, I normally end with a poem. I'm choosing between two that I stare at right now. What did I hear? Do both. Okay, so we're going to do Wendell Berry's The Peace of Wild Things first. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down in the wood drake, where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And this one is from a contemporary poet by the name of Andrea Gibson, and it's an excerpt from her poem called Birthday. She says, "Y'all, I know this world is far from perfect. I am not the type to mistake a street light for the moon. I know our wounds are deep as the Atlantic, but every ocean has a shoreline, and every shoreline has a tide that is constantly returning to wake the songbirds in our hands, to wake the music in our hearts, to place one fearless kiss on the mouth of that brave river that has to run through the center of our hearts to find its way home." Both pretty good. Good call. Yes. And we'll just take a deep breath and settle into this space that is love, that is light, that is filled to the rafters with the power and the presence of Spirit. And as we breathe into this, we breathe into the connection that we are one with all of life. That we are one with the light, with the sun, with the birds singing, with the trickling water. That we are connected to the person next to us, to all of those hearts that we love and hold dear, to all of humanity as it lives and moves and has its being. And we recognize that in that connection, the divine is always present, that God is always present, and that we are one in this experience. So we open our hearts up. We open our hearts to our own experiences of joy and grief, of sorrow, of exhilaration. We let those experiences into our bodies and our minds and our souls, and we let them move us. Knowing that as we have these experiences, we are connected with every other life on this planet who knows those same things. Excitement, love, peace, kindness. We are connected to it all. And as we allow these things to move through us, we know that we are creating safe space for everyone on the planet to have these same experiences, knowing that they are loved, that they are divine, that they are one with all that is. And I give thanks for these opportunities to be reminded that we are connected to something so much bigger than us, that we are living and moving and having our being in this connection. And I give thanks for every opportunity that we are presented with to remind others of the same, to remind others that they are graceful, beautiful, perfect expressions of spirit. I breathe into this loving gratitude. I let it go with spirit, and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you, everyone.